Hello and welcome to Celebrating Cinema, a podcast for the love of cinema. I'm your host, Laura and I'm here with the esteemed film journalist, Hugo Emmertsal.
Oh, what a huge compliment. Hey, guys.
And we're going to talk to you about the new releases of the first half of March. And boy, do we have a rich lineup this time. We're going to be chatting about Bong Joon-ho's first release after Parasite, which is the extremely goofy sci-fi comedy Mickey 17. Then we have Mike Leigh's realist comedy drama Hard Truths and the Brazilian award season darling I'm Still Here. Hugo, you just came back from Berlin for the Berlinale. How was it? Do you have any juicy stories, highlights, lowlights?
As a whole, it was absolutely underwhelming edition of the film festival. It was the 75th edition, so that's a big jubilee.
Party hard, you'd say.
Party hardy, but there was not so much to celebrate movie-wise, I would say. It was a historically bad edition, which for me was actually great because it meant I could enjoy the city a bit more, feel a little less pressured to be this esteemed film journalist that you referred to in the opening and just vibe a bit more. So I had a great time, but not necessarily always a great time at the movies.
Oh man, because you did see Mickey 17 there.
Oh,
I think
yes.
that's a great bridge to talk about that one. So Mickey 17 is the new English language sci-fi comedy by Bong Joon-ho. It comes out this week and is screening twice a day here at Lab 111 in Amsterdam. The film is based on Edward Ashton's 2022 novel, Mickey 7, and it stars Robert Pattinson in a super wacky-ass double role for which he lists Ren and Stimpy as his prime inspiration.
Who is Ren and Stimpy?
Ren and Stimpy, okay, so Elliot's a little bit younger. So Ren and Stimpy was a cartoon in the 90s about a chihuahua and a cat? Like, what are they even?
Cat gerbil hybrid or whatever. Strange critters.
Strange critters. It's super wacky, goofy. It has these really disgusting, like, close-ups of, like, remember those?
Oh, yes.
I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's a staple of kids who were born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s.
Okay.
It's an interesting inspiration for a human role. So the story follows Mickey Barnes, and he is a quote-unquote expendable crew member on a mission to colonize the icy planet of Niflheim. What's an expendable? That is someone who is assigned to perform really dangerous tasks like lab trials or other missions with a huge mortality risk. And knowing that when they die, there's going to be another copy of them printed out with their consciousness and most of their memories intact. There's a big yikes, though, when the 17th iteration of Mickey is presumed dead and a new fresh print, Mickey 18, is created, and my dream of having two Robert Pattinsons existing at the same time comes true. Here's a clip.
Are you afraid to die?
Kinda, yeah. You died plenty of times. What are you so scared of?
Until now, I died and I was just born again, you know? It felt like it was me continuing on. But now, once I die, it'll be over for me. It'll be you living on. You get what I mean? I don't like you. You're such a little bitch. But I'm you. I'm not you. I'm not gonna live like you. I'm gonna kill you.
So as you mentioned, the film premiered in Berlin and it was met with mostly positive reviews, but your letterbox has given me a hint, sweet Hugo, that we might have another one of those Siskel and Ebert situations here.
I feel so spied on, by the way, by my letterboxd. But I promised in this year that I would keep it up to date as much as I can. So you already know, spoiler alert, that I'm not very fond of Bong Joon-ho's Mikey 17.
Oh no!
Oh no, quelle surprise. Yeah, I saw it in Berlin in the press screening and I was wholly underwhelmed. This is one of the big, huge films that was playing at the festival. A film that was also, I think, postponed multiple times. So people had a high anticipation and huge expectations of these films. And, well, it's somewhat ironic that the planet that Robert Pattinson has to go to as this expendable is freezing as hell because the film just left me somewhat cold. Bong Joon-ho is a terrific director and you can see that he has a lot of ingenious and incredible and interesting ideas. But essentially for me, what I was wrestling with a lot during the film was the fact that it feels like in many ways he's maybe restrained by the studio system, the American film studio system in which he is making this film. So at the one hand, it's wacky and it wants to be intelligent. At the other hand, the film constantly over-explains itself with a voiceover that doesn't work for me, with a narrative structure that is too much for me. And this tension for me was very frustrating. It's also interesting because you see this huge auteur trying to make this crossover mainstream film like only Bong Joon-ho can do, because, I mean, let's be real, Parasite is so incredibly popular and deservedly so because it's a masterpiece. And here I see this tension and that fascinates me and it frustrates me at equal ends.
Yeah, it's interesting because Bong Joon-ho is a director who keeps saying, it's like, I will only make a movie if I can make the movie that I want. That was famously his struggle with Harvey Weinstein on Snowpiercer.
Oh, yes.
So he does seem to me like a director with a lot of integrity. And I, surprise, surprise, really liked it.
Yes, let's go.
Let's go. No, I thought it was incredibly endearing, and I do love Bong Joon-ho as a person. I love when he does press tours. I love that he's a goofy ass person, and I feel like in a lot of his movies he hasn't been able, or he's always been able, because as I said, he has a lot of control over his own movies, but he hasn't really let his freak flag fly and been at liberty to make something incredibly goofy. And I was press screened this in IMAX, which was incredible, and I sat there and like, it opened and I thought it was a surprising acting choice for Robert Pattinson. And I was immediately like endeared by how convincing his like, oh, no worries if not, kind of like cuck character is. Like, oh, that's okay. If you want me to die, I'll just die. That's cool. And not only does that, in my opinion, make for a fun premise, like, oh, what happens kind of in almost like a Severance kind of way, right? It poses these questions of like, what is a human being? What is consciousness? What is a life worth?
In the face of all this relentless corporate control and extractive capitalism.
Because that's the thing that I noticed in this movie is that how quickly the people on this mission that are responsible for him like dying and being reprinted, how quickly they stop treating him as a human being. And how kind of laissez-faire is like, oh, just let him just do another one. Just like, we'll just print another one. And that just reminded me so much of like the current state of capitalism and the Amazon warehouses and Temu, and even with myself, like how I will order Uber Eats when it's raining and you're like, oh, there's just going to be this other person that does it. It's fine. I thought that was a really strong statement. I do recognize that it has some weaknesses. I think it's trying to do too much. Yeah, because, especially in the third act. Because
it's like the satire is all there, and you can read it very clearly. Like you say, this capitalist extraction, this political demagoguery, literally the expendable nature of a human life. It's this colonizing of a different planet, and there's this fantastic, by the way, one of my favorite roles in the film is Mark Ruffalo as this like demagogic, let's say, leader of this enterprise of colonizing.
Let's say it's a very thinly veiled Trump impression.
Yeah, with some Elon Musk thrown in there as well. He's just an absolute idiot. And his partner, Toni Collette, is the strong woman behind every strong man. And she's obviously much stronger and also much more fascinating. So there's a lot of interesting things going on there. Some good bits, some very funny jokes, some great, like, slapsticky almost acting. But then, okay, so you read all these satirical elements into the film. Then I'm just constantly looking at it almost on the scene level and wondering what else is there? Where's the tension? Where's the genuine excitement? Where's the sense of wonder? Where does it actually transcend its own material and become something more? And then I was just reminding myself of being in Cannes, watching Parasite for the first time and just being constantly shocked by the sense of control, the way that almost like a conductor, he can play with the expectations of the audience, resulting in, like with Parasite, just these like massive sighs of relief and excitement and screams and shouts of the audience with like pinpoint perfection. Yeah. And I don't see that here and I don't feel it. And yeah, I don't know. Then I am constantly looking for more in the material and I don't find it. And that sucks because I love Bong Joon-ho as well, but I don't love this film.
It is true what you say, that like the thing that I love about most Bong Joon-ho films, because next week we're doing a very interesting deep dive into the work of Bong Joon-ho. So I've been really, really diving deep into his work. And what most of his movies do is that every 20 minutes, there's this thing where you go, oh, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, damn.
Let's
And-
switch it up.
Yeah, and this didn't really have that. Obviously, this is not a spoiler, but then Mickey 18 gets printed out.
Yeah.
And the thing that bummed me out a little bit is that it seemed like a bit of an afterthought that this Mickey has a completely different personality.
Yes. Well, this is one of the hugest, I would say, problems on a screenplay level with the film, indeed, is that suddenly the film takes this next direction and it doesn't really explore anything very well about the world building, about the mechanics of this printing machine that makes these new iterations of Robert Pattinson. And then suddenly we find out that every previous iteration of this Mickey from 1 till 16 up to 17 and 18 has a different personality.
But it's only mentioned very briefly in a voiceover sentence, which makes me think that the movie was initially supposed to be like 3 hours long and we would have explored it. And I was like, okay, it needs to be shorter. Let's cut out the whole montage.
And see, this is exactly what I meant at the beginning, that you see this tension between the control that Bong Joon-ho maybe wants to exert over the material and the sense that some things have to be explained as an afterthought to make everything feel more fully realized. And it just dumps it down for me to a level that I am not expected of this director. However, if I am thinking about Mark Ruffalo, Toni Collette, Robert Pattinson, they're all doing insane and very funny things.
Yeah.
I don't know if people have listened.
Naomi Aki should also be mentioned.
Of course,
She's
come
incredible.
on. I don't know if people have seen Okja, but there's this Jake Gyllenhaal role in that film that is also very clownesque and farcical. And it's like taking this character and populating an entire planet with these types of people. That's funny, and occasionally I'm really laughing, but sometimes I was also kind of like looking at the clock like,
Really?
when can I go back into the city?
Oh, you wanted to have a little doner kebab or something. So I never really felt the runtime. I did think that the third act was trying to do way too much and it gets kind of tangled in its own web because there's a subplot with the creatures that are already on the planet, which by the way is very funny that they keep referring to as aliens.
Whereas the humans are the aliens that are endangering the indigenous population of this icy planet. There's so much in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is fascinating to try to dissect all of these layers.
But it does that, and then there's like a drug dealing subplot, and then there's a bounty hunter subplot, and then there's a love subplot, and then I feel like in the third act it just goes like, oh shit, we put out all these things and now we have to solve it. But I don't know. I thought the way that they did it was kind of cute. And yeah, again, to Robert Pattinson's, what could go wrong?
You're diving deep into Bong Joon-ho's oeuvre. Where would you place it, and what is then also maybe for reference for our listeners one of your favorites?
Well, obviously, Parasite is one of my favorites. Also, Mother is great. Definitely listen to next week's episode where we go into great detail. But yeah, on the spectrum of Bong Joon-ho, this is definitely not his best. But I think it's very different. It's most similar to Okja, I would say, in tonality and everything. But it's hard to rank them because it's like ranking my children. He is one of my favorite directors. It's just it's a huge departure from something like Mother, which is quite serious and it has funny parts, but it is quite like has built a lot of tension. And this is more just like, let's have a goofy time on a fun planet with fun creatures and a silly guy and some more silly guys.
Well, I'm excited to hear that he announced that he's going to make a film in South Korea again, and that it's a film that he wanted to make already his entire career.
Ooh.
And this passion, maybe when you really feel it with him, you really, really, really feel it. And there's moments of brilliance in this as well. But I'm mostly looking forward to the next project of Bong Joon-ho, however long it may take, because there was like a solid 6 years between this and Parasite as well.
Took him a minute. Well, we will be here talking about it in however many years. We can move on to the next one, which is Hard Truths. So Hard Truths is a new comedy drama directed by Mike Leigh, starring the incredible Marie Jean-Baptiste as Pansy Deacon. And this Pansy Deacon is a middle-aged Londoner grappling with depression and unbearable levels of bitterness, which results in her getting into arguments with strangers in parking lots and supermarkets, but also her husband and her sister Chantal. And Chantal is quite the opposite. She's joyful, she's kind, she's shown laughing with her 2 daughters and giving advice to women at her job at a hair salon. So what this movie does is it really dives into like familial tension and depression and mental health and how you can come from the same family as your siblings, but still have a completely different outlook on life. Here is a clip.
And her over there with that fat baby. Cold, 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 and she's walking up and down the street with nothing but a big pink bow on its bald head so everybody can tell it's a girl, like our care. Parading it around in the little outfit, not dressed for the weather, nah, with pockets. What's the baby got pockets for? What's it gonna keep in its pocket? A knife? It's ridiculous.
Hugo, what did you think of this one?
Fucking love this film
Yes.
so
Okay, we
incredibly.
finally agree.
Finally, I love this film so incredibly much. I remember watching it on my laptop on the screener in the middle of the night, and I'm lying in bed and I'm constantly like laughing out loud and genuinely crying, like real tears and real laughter, because this is the genius of Mike Leigh, that he can do both of those things sometimes at the same time, making one of the funniest films I've seen in years, but also one that is so profoundly sad and deep and tragic. And that is just so incredibly beautiful to me. This Pansy is a character that at the beginning you really don't understand why everything has to be so incredibly difficult with her, why everything is a conflict, like a war and a struggle with her family and the outside world. All of this weight that she carries on her shoulder, and then without actually really explaining it, the film makes you understand why by just spending time with her.
Yeah.
And this is so beautiful to me, and maybe also to tie it back to Mickey 17, here we have a film that doesn't need to over-explain itself for you to realize the depth, the profoundness of what it's actually trying to convey. So I was shook. I find it an incredible masterpiece. Mike Leigh is one of the most talented and beautiful and interesting and insightful humanist directors working in the UK right now. And this is almost like a crowning achievement for him, for me at least.
Yeah. I have to say, Elliot and I saw it together, and I have to say that in the beginning, I quite had to get used to the look and feel of it and the tone of it, because it looks a little bit like a daytime TV drama.
Yes, kitchen sinky.
Yeah,
Yes.
truly. And then I started researching a little bit, and I found out that Mike Leigh is actually a pioneer of daytime TV drama,
Yes.
and that's where he got to start. So maybe he's just the reason daytime TV dramas look like this. And the tone of the acting was something that I had to get used to a little bit, because it's almost theater monologues that she does at the
Yeah.
kitchen table, which are, by the way, hilarious.
So funny.
So I think for the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to dig this. And then it just pulled me in, and the characters are so endearing, and you just feel bad for this lady that you don't know initially what she's gone through. But it just reminds me of like being in traffic or being at the supermarket and seeing this fucking bitch. And she just like starts yelling at you, and it's like, what the fuck is wrong with this lady? And it just makes you more empathetic to like, oh, everyone who is super bitter has a reason for it, and it's just going through a tough time.
And it's so like texturally layered. There's one scene that I'm like think about so fondly, and I refer to a lot as well in my own private life, is that there's this moment where she's having a fight with her husband, and then suddenly a fox passes in the backyard of her London home, and she's like, oh my God, a fox just appeared. It is so profoundly funny. I was cracking up so much. And this is also life. Like, you're in the middle of a fucking fight and something funny happens, and or something shocking, and it just completely drags you out. And then, you know, she's constantly not connecting with people around her and just only trying to maybe enforce all of these frustrations inside her on her situation that she finds herself in. And then there's this incredibly funny scene where she's in a parking lot and she's having this conflict with another guy who's trying to look for a place to park his car, and she's just dying basically emotionally in her car, and he's shouting at her, miss, are you gonna go out of this parking place because I need to park? And she's shouting at him and he's shouting at her, and it's beautiful because the film doesn't do anything with it except establishing that there is in fact somebody in this world that is exactly alike, that is just as much a fucked up, tensed, incredibly difficult person as her, and maybe they deserve each other, but they are not into each other's lives. They are just two strangers passing on the street on a certain moment, and then they go out of their lives again. But like the implication that maybe with him something would be different, or maybe it would not, but that you can think about these things while you're watching the film. Oh, beautiful.
It was beautiful. And I have to say, it was some of the biggest laughs that I've had in cinema for at least the past year was her monologue at the kitchen table where she's just ranting about everything that happened to her that day. And she just goes, saw a baby in a stroller and the baby had pockets. Why would a baby need pockets? And it's so relatable for like deeply angry people to just go off about everything that everyone who has wronged them that day, everyone who dared to come across her. Yeah, I thought it was incredibly beautiful spending some time with this character.
The lead actress, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, she also plays in Secret and Lies, which is another one of the great, let's say, highlights of Mike Leigh's oeuvre, a film that's also being screened coincidentally with the release of Hard Truths in cinemas, also here in Lab 111. And to see this continuation of their work together and the frankness and the daringness in which he can portray this role that is so incredibly messy, and then slowly unveiling where maybe some of these traumas come from, secretly and slowly unearthing it, and you never really get this grasp of it, but you're constantly thinking about it. It's such an emphatic piece of filmmaking, so deeply humanist. Yeah, my God. What can I even say? I'm just constantly thinking about this film as well in life, and when I'm watching other films, I'm sometimes genuinely thinking, I could be watching Hard Truths right now again, because I love it so much.
I do want to add, I also really love the undertones of Moses' character, sort of him battling with a sense of neurodiversity. And
so for the listeners, Moses is
being
the
his
son.
Yeah, and that being sort of a consequence of the household and environment that he's grown up with, and the parents not understanding him in that way. And I think it's done in a very subtle way that you sympathize a lot with Moses' character without really understanding what it is.
Yeah, you see patterns of trauma and you see how stifling such an emotional space can be. There's one terrific scene where the father, the husband, comes back home and he knows that his wife is just again in this like deeply anxious and painful and emotional state. And he's just standing there frozen himself, just completely emotionally paralyzed by the entire situation. And you understand both of them, that how difficult it is to actually connect within these circumstances. Like, what do you even do? Yeah, I don't know. And then to aesthetically speaking, you know, I find that the film in its modest, let's say, mise-en-scène or visual style actually kind of constantly transcends that material. And maybe it needs to look like this for you to feel all of these things as well. Because if you would add more visual flourishes to this film, they would overshadow, they would overcrowd what is at the heart of this film. And that is that emotional
realistic.
reservoir.
Yeah. The way it's filmed is so realistic that it makes the story more realistic.
But then sometimes he just kind of like zooms out almost and just kind of shows more the process of daily life, the work that the husband does, you know, like as a kind of like, you know, just doing odds and ends, moving furniture, repairing some stuff in the home. And he just gets this kind of like slight Roy Anderson-like visas, like the great Scandinavian director who just makes these beautiful odes to ordinary little people and their daily struggles. And in all of this banality, what the film shows me is also the great potential for beauty, because there is depth in this banality always. And this depth can be painful, utterly painful, but in that pain, the real life is residing. Deeply philosophical. My God.
So we both highly recommend its screening right now at Lab 111. We're moving on to the next film, which is I'm Still Here. So I'm Still Here, directed by Walter Salles, is the real-life story of a Brazilian family under Brazil's military dictatorship in the 1970s. And it shows how fickle life can be in those circumstances. Like, one minute you're at the beach, and the next minute you're getting pulled over and questioned and potentially beat up by the military. So we follow the family of Rubens Paiva. He's a former congressman. First, we see him in all these lovely family moments with his children and his loving wife and his friends, and there's dinners and parties and dancing. And then there's a knock at the door, after which Rubens is taken away for questioning, and he never returns. So his wife, Eunice, played terrifically by Fernanda Torres, then goes on a lifelong quest for truth and justice. And here's a clip.
Tá olhando o quê? O que vocês querem? Cadê meu marido? Vai embora! Sai daqui, vai embora! Sai!
So the movie earned 3 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Best Actress for Torres. But Hugo, what did you make of this?
Can I be honest?
Oh no.
I hate this film.
What are you talking about?
I find this like everything for me that is wrong with this like contemporary fiction filmmaking is accumulated in I'm Still Here, one of the biggest snooze fests I've seen in a very long time.
Boo!
Yes, boo to this movie, indeed. Walter Salles does, let's say, a fine job at conveying literally all of the things you said in the intro about the plot, but then that is literally it. And it kind of like, to put it very bluntly, it feels like he's emotionally sitting on my face and making me want to feel a certain way about these people. And I find it, yeah, it's a disgusting analogy, but I find the film to be a little bit disgusting as well. First, it's like, oh, we're the pie of us. We're so happy family. We're dancing. We're listening to French chansons and we know John Lennon and we have nice food at the home and we shoot film on 16 millimeter. And then, oh, but what if the military takes everything away? No. And then we have Eurice, the protagonist of the film, Fernando Torres. And she's just constantly taking it in stride, but in such a one-note, boring way for me where, yeah, I am still here, she's always still here, and I'm still always wondering what's left. You know, what else is in this film? Nothing, I thought. I thought it was like
harsh, Hugo.
I thought it was a vapid film, to be honest. And for me, it is fitting that it is so successful in the award season and that it's bagged for a couple of Oscars, because this reminds me of the genuine old school Oscar bait award season prestige movie, a film like Crash, and then I'm not talking the horny Crash of David Cronenberg, but the stupid Crash about racism and how bad it is. It's like just making the simple point. Oh, yes, we don't like the military dictatorship in Brazil, don't we? No, we don't. But then why are you taking 2.5 hours to basically say nothing else about it? Nothing in this material is doing more than just making me try to feel it in ways that I don't believe.
Wow, I fully disagree with you there.
Great, let's go.
I thought it was incredible. I must say I had very little knowledge about the military dictatorship in Brazil. Was not familiar, big gap in my education. But I feel like, especially in these times where I feel like, you know, the world, I won't name names, but the world is coming quite dangerously close to another dictatorship. It just like shows you all sides of how terrible, but also how terrible it can be, but also how it drives people to find justice and to constantly keep reminding people, because that was the journey that the real life Eunice, because let's remember that it's all based on the memoirs of the son, the wee baby son that we see in the movie, grew up and he wrote a book about this, and that's what this is based on. And Eunice fought her entire life to get a death certificate for her husband, to get acknowledgement of what that dictatorship did to anyone who was trying to help the enemy. You know, basically the reason he was taken was for forwarding letters to people, families. And this is just one of those things that like I wasn't really aware of. And I thought was incredibly gripping. I thought they did a really good job at making the family a real family. I believed it. I thought the daughters were all individually great. The one thing that did bum me out, which is not really a spoiler, but a minor one, is that it opens on like a really cute dog. And I was like, oh, bitch, this dog is going to die, isn't it? And this dog is going to die in a horrible way. I'm not here for it. But yeah, all of those things around it I thought were really cool because I felt like I knew this family. I knew their friends. I established that really well. It's like, these are his friends. And then you find out like, oh, everyone's kind of involved in this.
But this is exactly so that's very interesting because this is exactly my critique of the film, is that it's so incredibly schematic. And then it is at surface, of course, of these memoirs and of this real life story. Simultaneously, for me, at least, not really adding anything. And then also almost in its, let's say, insistent visual style and repeating of the same, let's say, narrative kind of like developments, just constantly reiterating the same point. So yes, for instance, the family, you feel like you understand them, you feel like you know them, But there's one shot that just annoyed me so incredibly much, which is where you see this entire family in their family home in the living room. And on the foreground, you have the adults talking with each other. In the middle, kind of like, but behind them, you have two of the daughters dancing to some French music, being very, let's say, free-spirited hippie. It's the 70s. Yay, we're so excited. We have nice French music on vinyl. And then in the background, you have some other adults talking probably about very serious politics because we're left-wing and everything is kind of terrible right now. And you see all of these things at the same time. And then I'm just constantly thinking, schematic. This is too clear to read for me. There's just
too much narrative.
There is literally only the narrative. That is it. There's nothing else for me. And then, yeah, sure, this Fernando Torres, she does a somewhat strong emotional performance because she carries the weight of this entire family that goes through this trauma, blah, blah, blah. But then you're just constantly looking at the same fucking face 2.5 hours of her
Hugo.
looking like a sour lady, and there's nothing there. You're just looking at a face with no mystery.
Disagree. Like, for example, there's a moment where they come and take a picture of her and
Yes,
the family.
again, all the time these pictures. Oh, look, we have memories.
Yeah, because those are the pictures that we see when the credits roll.
I
And it's
know.
like, these were real pictures that were taken. And I thought it was really strong when the newspaper comes and takes a picture of this family. And then the photographer says like, hey, can you
do
look,
a sad
can you look
face?
like a
Yeah.
little sad? And she goes, hell fucking no.
Yeah.
We're going to smile. And I don't know. I disagree with you. I think that she showed a lot of range. And I think that she was refusing to, they show that she was refusing to back down to this like hurt wife that is still here. She never stopped. And the same thing at the end, the reporter asks her, is like, well, it's been so long, isn't it time that we leave this behind us? And she just goes in with a simple no.
Yeah.
It isn't time to forget. And I don't know. I thought it was really great.
No, and I do recognize, let's say, the urgency, because there's many Brazilian filmmakers also when I interview them that often refer back to this era and say there's just an entire, let's say, cultural and political memory that's being erased, and it's not in the archives, it's not in the state archives. We don't have contemporary strong reflections on it. So I see the necessity, and I see why, let's say, not throwing you under the bus here, Laura, but that this kind of like middle brow prestige, for me almost pastiche of it, is an effective way to emotionally address all of these things. But if you don't connect on that emotionally, there's literally nothing here. And that is just, and then I'm just getting incredibly more anxious and annoyed and bored and frustrated with this film. So I have a strong hate relationship with the film while also understanding why it has to exist. It is just literally simply not for me at all. Really not.
So I guess this is maybe a good moment to start printing T-shirts that say Team Hugo or Team Laura.
Yes.
Podcast merch dropping soon.
No, we need to find out for people as well, indeed, where they stand on these kind of films, where they fall in this debate, because it's super interesting and this film is getting so much recognition. And I remember being in Venice and this film being screened there, and I was just, it didn't seem like a film that would make huge waves. In the Venice section itself, in the lineup, it wasn't necessarily that highly visible. People were not really going crazy for it. And then it just floated its way up and up and up and up. So it's very interesting to see how audiences react to it. As a matter of fact, I know that in Rotterdam, at the International Film Festival of Rotterdam, it won the Audience Award. So people love it. I am, again, here, like very clearly the contrarian. But I have, I think, good reasons for it. I'm suspicious of these kind of films, and it ties into a deeper point that I am struggling to fully flesh out yet, but that I see this kind of crisis in fiction feature storytelling, where we're so, let's say, reliant on a form of emotional, plotty storytelling that doesn't seem to get at the heart of what it means to live right now, today. It's like a cinema stuck in 2016 forever. This is very much a film for me that feels like that. It's just stuck in an era of time that I'm not interested anymore, cinematically speaking. And I will try to formulate this more strongly in later episodes. But this film for me feels like a film of the past. And I hope that at some point in terms of storytelling, we can move on. But in this simultaneously, we're still here. We're forever stuck, but I'm still here.
We're still here. Well, if you want to see which one of us you agree with, you're in luck because all of the movies we discussed today will be screening at Lab 111 in Amsterdam. So if you want to grab your tickets for that, you should just check out the show notes. You can see Mickey 17 and Hard Truths from March 6th, and I'm Still Here will be here from the 13th. And if you're into Bong Joon-ho, you'd be honestly silly not to subscribe to this podcast because next week we're diving deep into the Korean New Wave movement by excessively discussing all of Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook's work. So that's going to be very fun. To coincide with that, we're also doing a Celebrating Cinema Film Club here at Lab 111 where we will screen Old Boy with an introduction, and tickets to that are also in the show notes. Stay connected with us at Celebrating Cinema and Lab by following at Lab 111 on Instagram and Letterboxd. Do you love what we do? Support us by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us climb the ranks of the podcast charts. This was a Lab 111 production, edited and produced by Elliot Bloom with music from Hugo Emertzal and artwork from Studio FFF.